Hello, everybody. My name is Theo, and on behalf of FP Markets, we thank you very much for watching. In this series, I'll be covering all the latest news with regards to the crypto markets. But before we dive right in, please like and subscribe to the video as it means very much to us. Also, of course, feel free to visit our Traders Hub. This is home to a wide array of educational materials such as articles and videos, but you can also find essential traders tools such as an economic calendar and a forex calculator for managing your risk. All this information is included and provided by Sage Trading Central and is applicable for all our account holders. Now, diving right into the price action for Bitcoin this week before we get into the news. As we've mentioned in the previous week when we were approaching our little trend line here, we've mentioned that if the price was to respect this trend line, we'd see a potential little bounce up to the 72,000 region, trying to approach 73, 74,000, then towards a new all-time high. However, if the trend line was to not be respected and was to be broken, then I wouldn't be surprised to see us have a drop down towards the $66,000 region with potential down to 64 and 62. Now, what did happen indeed was over the weekend and early on in the week, Bitcoin did indeed break the trend line. We did see a drop right down to the $66,000 region. The lowest we got was just below $66,000, $66,000 straight. We then saw an immediate spike right up. Now, this could be two reasons, or we can even call it a confluence. Why not? First reason, of course, is just standard support and resistance and what happens with a trend line breaks. Once you see a trend line break, it's always usual to try and see some sort of retest to establish this previous support now become a resistance, which is technically what has happened here. Of course, at the same time, there was a shoot up of $1,500 in Bitcoin in seconds, just as the CPI news got released by the US that was showing that inflation was cooling down. We can see from a perspective here, and we can see from our chart here, this is right here. From our drop in seconds, we saw a rise from $66,000 all the way up to $69,000, which was very interesting indeed. Now, like we said, this could be from a potential technical perspective of simple just retest of a trend line, but of course the news is always there to try and fuel the technicals. So we can see that there was a 3% surge in Bitcoin in seconds following the CPI news, which is very, very exciting, of course. In this time of that spike up, there was also a major swoop here of $1.4 billion worth of Bitcoin from the Bitcoin whales, which accumulated during that little correction, a totaling amount of 20,600 Bitcoin. As we said, is worth around $1.38 billion. So any single time that there are drops in the market, there are whales that are taking advantage, that are buying up and are taking advantage and buying this dip. So something to note in the future. In terms of the latest price action with Bitcoin, as we've seen following this retest of the trend line that we've been going down, it has been a day of outflows yesterday as well. There was $226 million of outflows in the Bitcoin ETFs. This time around, it was led by Fidelity's FP BTC. Once again, it's always going to be a cycle. There's going to be ins, there's going to be outs. On this time round, there was outflows that totaled $226 million. That was the third day of outflows for the week for Bitcoin, which is why it's also showing again in the price on a daily basis that we've had the decline now. Now, this is always normal. There's always going to be inflows, there's always going to be outflows, and depending on what happens in the news is also, of course, going to stir up the emotion and the psychology of what's happening with the buyers and sellers. In terms of other news coming off Bitcoin right now, the SEC have signed off now. The US judge has signed off following the settlement with the SEC for Do Kwon, who's a part of the Terraform Labs. $4.5 billion is the settlement. Now, just to have a bit of a backstory with what happened with Terraform Labs and its former CEO, Do Kwon, they're now being forced to pay billions in penalties, as well as being virtually banned from the crypto space, but no one can say that it's not exactly undeserved. 2 months ago, the New York jury found that Terraform Labs and Kwon were civilly liable for fraud stemming $40 billion from the collapse of the Terra ecosystem, which was in May 2022. But it wasn't just the Terra ecosystem, because this implosion itself led to the collapse of many other things as well, including crypto hedge funds such as Three Arrows Capital, which also took out other crypto companies, which included Genesis Global Capital and indirectly FTX as well, which I've mentioned before in the past. So considering that we're looking at well over $40 billion now of fraud that came from the Terraform Labs, Ripple, on the other side, have a very big complaint for this, because they feel that the fine that the SEC have given them, which is $2 billion for the selling of the supposed selling of unregistered securities, which is XRP, they find this fine to be extremely excessive, especially considering that the fine that Do Kwon is receiving is $4.5 billion in comparison to the actual amount that people have lost is something that just is completely unprecedented and doesn't match when it comes relative to what's actually happened in terms of what crime has been committed, who has lost money, and what's happening there. Ripple's lawyers argued that $2 billion penalty far exceed the norms established in similar cases. They had analysis and they said that penalties like this typically range from 0.6 to 1.8% of gross revenues in comparable situations. As a quote, he said, here, by contrast, the SEC seeks a civil penalty far exceeding that range. And even though there are no allegations of fraud in this case, an institutional buyers did not suffer substantial losses. So they're marking here that nobody did lose anything major. There was no fraud. Everything has been by the book, yet that fine is $2 billion, whereas somebody that's making a massive fraud is being fined $4.5 billion relative to what they've actually frauded. They don't seem it to be appropriate, and they find that there is some sort of ill motivation towards Ripple within the SEC. There is some sort of agenda. This is what they feel. When it comes to the SEC itself, Chair Gary Gensler has stated in a hearing recently that the Ethereum ETFs should be finished by the summertime. He suggested that the Ethereum ETFs are already approved and that all that's remained now is just the registration details being hammered out at the staff level. He also mentioned again that the Ethereum ETFs should be approved by late summer, early September. So itself, you'd think that this is positive news. However, when it's coming to the price reflection of Ethereum, this pump here came from the news of the ETFs. However, because there hasn't been a full approval yet, and it is just a case of waiting for it to be approved, this is a buy the rumor, sell the news kind of perspective. In the video beforehand, we'd already mentioned when we were at this price from before, if we were to see a break of a similar trend line that we saw similar in the price pattern of Bitcoin as well, we had the trend line. If we were to see this retest of a trend line, then we wouldn't be surprised to see 3,700 towards a $3,900 and $4,000 region. However, if the price was to break the trend line, then I wouldn't be surprised to see us reach around 3,400, 500, with potential to reach 3,333. Now, similarly with Bitcoin, we saw Ethereum break the trend line, have a retest of the trend line. This could also be, of course, linked to the CPI news, but once again, these are technical perspectives that are just simply respecting patterns that happen all the time. Now, the price is at our region that we suggested towards the 3,400, 3,500 region, and it looks like there is potential here for the price to reach around 3,300, 3,333, 3,400 once more. So we shall see what happens with this. In other news, a Swiss regulator has shut down a crypto-linked bank, Flowbank. They are now beginning a bankruptcy process. Flowbank is an institution that was providing crypto services. However, the Swiss Financial Market Supervisory Authority, FINMA, has announced its decision to shutter Flowbank on Thursday. This was yesterday, saying that the lender no longer had sufficient capital for its operations as a bank and that the minimum capital requirements had been significantly and seriously breached. They also added that there's well-founded concerns that the bank is currently over-indebted with no prospect of restructuring. So they're going through a bankruptcy procedure right now. This is Flowbank, so just again, once again, anybody that has had some sort of involvements in crypto in the past that are not doing things properly or are not being able to manage their risk correctly are then seeing punishments later on, whether it's through bankruptcy, whether it's through fines, whether it's through jail time. Anybody that's been in the space from the last few years that has done some sort of wrongdoing has started to see some sort of accountability come to their place right now. So always be careful out there, guys, especially when it comes to certain institutions that you might not be too familiar with that are offering services that you don't know too much about. Always do your due diligence. As we can see here, there's been plenty of processes now where there's many people that have lost life savings that are still waiting for their funds, whether it's Terra Luna, whether it's Do Kwon, whether it's Flowbank, whether it's FTX, whether it's Mt. Gox. There's many, many situations. So it will continue until there is further regulation to give this clarity. In terms of clarity, President Biden in this last article for the week announced his picks for the SEC, the FDIC, and the Treasury leadership. Itself, he's picked a couple of noteworthy individuals that could be considered positive for the crypto space. One would be nominated is Christy Goldsmith Romero. She'll be in charge of the Commodity Futures and Trading Commission, which is the CFTC. They'll be replacing the FDIC chair, Martin Grunberg. Also wants to add Kristen Johnson to become the next Assistant Secretary for Financial Institutions at the Treasury Department, and Caroline Crenshaw to remain as Commissioner at the SEC. The news itself is because the Commission's terms are expiring soon, as we mentioned in our previous videos, that because President Biden's administration in the last 4 years hasn't been exactly positive for the crypto space, anybody that's had some sort of influence in the crypto space has also stated that President Biden's administration has not been a very positive change for the crypto space. So in this, we'd also mentioned in the past as well that the Trump administration, the Trump campaign have already stated that they're fine with crypto. Trump has already openly said that if crypto can be regulated in an appropriate way, then he doesn't have a problem with it. So the Biden administration have also caught wind of this, have seen that there are votes there to be won, and every single vote counts. So now they're bringing in a few more individuals that are a little bit more positively crypto-minded. So that was the news for this week. As we've said with the price action for Ethereum, right now we're at the $3,471 region. I wouldn't be surprised to see us reach 3,333. If we do reach this region, then I wouldn't be surprised to see another little bounce. But once again, there is nothing stopping it going to 3,200, maybe even 3,100. So we shall see what happens with Ethereum and vice versa for Bitcoin as well. If Bitcoin continues its drop, I wouldn't be surprised to see us around the $62,000, $64,000 region. However, we could also see another pump up towards the $69,000, $70,000 region to see another retest of this trend line. Until then, thank you once again, everybody, for watching this video. If anybody does have any questions, then of course, feel free to contact me. You can subscribe to the video, of course, comment if you do have any questions. We're available 24/7 as well on our website, www.fpmarkets.com. And until next week, thank you very much once again for watching. Have a great weekend, and I wish you all the best with your trading. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.